Yes, welcome to the Biz Communication Show. I'm your host, Bill Lampton, the Biz Communication Guy. Every week, hosting an outstanding business communicator for a discussion so that you and I can learn tips and strategies that will help us in our business communication. Today, I'm delighted to welcome Drew Reed. Drew graduated from the Macaulay School in Chattanooga, Tennessee, before he earned his Bachelor of Arts degree from Denison University. He started his professional career as a stockholder before beginning a 25-year career working in nonprofits. In 1994, Drew became a staff member of the Paul Anderson Youth Home, where he served as a teacher, headmaster, and administrator. After earning his Master of Business Administration from Emory University in 2004, he was named Chief Operating Officer of the Paul Anderson Youth Home. In 2016, having older parents, one of which had cancer, Drew became the executive director of the Deep South Cancer Foundation, where he built a fundraising event around the concept, and I really like this, the concept of cancer is complicated, helping is not. From writing to speaking, operations, financial management, team building, and fundraising, Drew has a broad spectrum of experience within the world of nonprofits, and he brings an expertise focused on the treatment and care of people. Drew currently serves as the Director of Alumni Giving for his alma mater, Macaulay School in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and I'm proud to say that's my alma mater too. Welcoming now Drew Reed. Hello, Drew.
Hi, Bill. How are you?
Delighted now that you've joined me, and thinking today of professional fundraising and how communication relates to that, there's a key question to start with. That key question is, why should anybody make charitable gifts? I mean, after all, we've got our college education to pay for our children. We've got our retirement to take care of. We've got medical expenses that are unforeseen. All of these things I'm sure you've heard before. So with all of these economic demands and uncertainties on families, why should I or anybody else make a charitable contribution?
I think first is that giving makes us feel good. It just does. It's this utility we all have with having given something to someone else. So I think giving as a charitable act, and 69% of us in America give, it makes us feel good, and it helps us feel like we have made change, made a difference in the world around us. And I think those are just from off the top. Those are the easy reasons to give. It's not because of the tax deduction. That's not typically why people give. It's pretty low on the list, actually. But first, why do we give? Because it makes us feel good. Because it makes us feel like we have created change and made an impact on those around us.
I think that second part is equally important. Yes, it makes us feel good, but it makes us feel good because we've made others feel good.
That's right.
Interesting that I stayed in a hotel the last 2 nights and I took a picture of their welcome mat. It said, "Making you happy makes us happy."
Mm.
That's very much what you're saying. There's a satisfaction in looking at human need, and there's so much in this world. There's a satisfaction in knowing that our contribution can be a part of that. As you said, and I knew during my 2 decades as a professional fundraiser, if you try to appeal to people to give because of tax reasons, you're talking about one of the least motivating factors. And in fact, that's true for any organization. So that's not a selling point for your organization. That can apply anywhere. Well,
No, I mean, I think that's exactly right. I mean, it doesn't sell, and particularly if I pressure you to give or if I make you feel guilty, that doesn't sell or create a reason for you to be able to act out your beliefs and the change you want to see in the world.
no, pressure does not work very well with
No.
philanthropy. Now, One of the other questions that I certainly had in mind is that you talked a minute ago about the sources of gifts. And I know there was a misconception I had before I went into professional fundraising. You read in the paper where some major corporate foundation has made a multi-million dollar gift to Macaulay School or
Right.
University of Tennessee or the Salvation Army or other nonprofit organizations. Okay, that's fine and it's vital, but there's a misconception that that's where most of the money comes from. But where, in fact, percentage wise, does most of the giving come from?
72% of all donations that in the total charitable giving that takes place are made by individuals. And I think that's a great question, Bill, because really at the bottom of that is 5% is actually coming from corporations. So the charitable makeup is individuals, foundations, then bequests people make at their death, and then at the bottom is corporations. So it's not, we hear those big numbers, and I think corporations give philanthropy for lots of reasons, for good reasons, but it also helps them with their own brand and their marketing as well. Whereas with individuals, I think typically, and that's why we see it in such mass, they give because they want to create that change, that need that they see around them, and they want to address it.
Yes, and to me, one of the great facts about knowing this is that when you talk to an individual and they say, well, gee, my gift won't matter. Yes, your gift not only matters, it's a part of 72% of giving in America.
That's right. And if we all took that perspective, well, my $15 gift doesn't matter, then no one does anything. And it really collapses down. I mean, the amount of money given to philanthropy, it's being made up of by individuals at smaller gift amounts. At
Another,
my Oh,
yeah,
go ahead. I'm sorry, Bill.
no, excuse me, if you hadn't finished, go ahead.
No, I was thinking about the fact that one of the things that we had done with philanthropy at a previous organization around cancer is we worked. You noted it in the bio. We went with the idea that cancer is complicated, helping is not, and we invented a charitable fundraising model that to our knowledge didn't exist. And it was, we didn't ask people to pay a registration fee to be a part of our cycling event, and we also didn't make them fundraise. We give them the choice of doing so. And we were amazed at when we gave people the choice and made it easy for them to give or fundraise if they so chose, how they responded. And on average, they raised $130 per person without us even asking. And I think that kind of gives a testimony to the ethos of this spirit of philanthropy. It's not that people are tired of giving. You hear this term donor fatigue all the time. It's not that people are tired of giving. It's they are tired of being made to feel like they have to. And when giving becomes something you have to do, you lose. When it's not a choice, you lose something in that.
You know, one of the things, of course, that anybody in philanthropy has to do is to change the methodology as society changes. One of the items that I have in mind is that I remember very well when I first became a professional fundraiser at my alma mater, Millsaps College in Jackson, Mississippi. One thing was rather new then, and that was telephone campaigns. Telethons, we call them. Sometimes people confuse that with television fundraising events. We called them telethons, and alumni would get together and they would gather around in an office setting and they would call alumni. And sometimes you'd email the alums ahead of time and tell them that they were going to expect those calls. That was novel then. It's not novel anymore. And it's not as easy as it was, again, changing with the times because now people have caller ID. 50% of people have cut out their home phones. I notice Macaulay still does this. So what have you done to make it effective with all these new, I guess I'll call them changes and, in fact, barriers that have come up?
It's certainly hard. I mean, it is a new world in terms of if you're taking the phonathon approach to philanthropy and fundraising, because I think there's a danger to that, right, Bill? That that donors, alumni get a call once a year, and you begin to feel a little bit like an ATM machine. So the only way to soften or warm that call so that you're even the phone call is answered, and it's difficult when you have a lot of alums that you're dealing with, but you have to reach out and communicate with them other than just one time a year I'm calling you to ask you for money. So it is challenging because of caller ID, all the reasons that you just said. And all nonprofits, all schools that are using phonathons as a campaign have to evolve. But ultimately, people give to people. They give to organizations, certainly, but they give because they feel a connection to that school. And so, like on many others, you use volunteers, you use some kind of connection, whether it was a classmate or you played soccer or you were in the band together, whatever that might be, and you use that as a way to break through, because people will answer the call if they know you, but if they don't have your number in their caller ID, it's difficult to go through. And so it becomes imperative for an organization to know the volunteers and what they're asking them to do, and then equip it and make it easy for them to succeed, whether it's an email, whether it's a social media post, or if it's a phone call or a visit.
There's something you said there that to me is key, and that is I would hear sometimes from people when I was a professional fundraiser, well, as you just quoted, the only time we hear from you is when you want money from us. This is why it's so important to have good publications. It's important to have the meetings that I saw you host, where you were here in Gainesville, Georgia. You gathered together the alums from this area. You caught us up on what was happening with the school. You had a question and answer session that happened, you told me, in Savannah, Georgia, Columbia, South Carolina, a number of other places. You even went to the state championship football game that Macaulay was in. So there's something about being, uh, I can't just say omnipresent, but there is something about being visible in a wide variety of ways. And now we not only have our publications, we have videos, we can have video meetings. If we can't get to Seattle, for example, you could have uh, as we're doing now, you could have a Zoom session with those people. So while technology has changed, if we learn to use it, it can be a great ally for us.
Absolutely. Absolutely it can be. And I think technology gives us tools to do other things. I mean, we can't, to your point, be omnipresent. We can't come to Gainesville, Georgia every week, but we can come from time to time and people can meet and hear and ask questions. The other things that you can do with phones, which is one of the great things, is you can have call-ins. You can create an opportunity for alums or donors to call in and hear what's going on. So it's not the organization initiating the call, it's the alumni. Oh, that's going on. I'd love to hear about the new program that's being developed at XYZ school or XYZ nonprofit. I'd love to hear how they're addressing homelessness or what the food bank is doing, and then sharing that back. So creating the opportunity for people to come in versus it always going out creates, I think, as you well know in communication, relationship is and communication is the key, because it's two-way, it's not one way.
This is the Biz Communication Show. What communication skills do you believe are most important in philanthropy for an organization that's seeking contributions?
I think you have to be an active listener. And I think when we say listening, it's not just it's sitting there in agreement per se. It's listening to what's really being said by the individual and what's the heart behind it. And there has to be empathy. There has to be responsiveness. And it doesn't mean that because a donor or a person says you guys need to do this, that you can. Those interests don't always align. But listening and creating the opportunity, the safe space for an individual to be able to express their passions is critical, because ultimately that's what this is, right? People are going to need that safe space to be able to speak into concerns they have. They don't know, they don't do it every day of their life. They're not at the Macaulay School or Millsaps or the ASPCA, whatever it is. But but they have concerns and questions, and they need to feel heard.
I'm delighted that you put so much emphasis on listening skills because I've said for many years, uh, especially since I became a communication consultant, that listening is probably our most powerful communication
Mhm.
skill, and yet it's the least taught, it's the least understood, and it's the least practiced. Let's take, for an example, an alum who's very unhappy with what's happened at
Mhm.
Macaulay. If you, in taking that phone call, become totally defensive and argumentative, you will not only lose a contribution, you will lose someone who could be an ally. And it's amazing in any type of customer service. I teach this every month. In every type of customer service, many people who have a complaint, nobody will listen to them. If you or somebody else will listen to them, they will sometimes come around much more quickly than you can imagine, and certainly more quickly than they would in a combative situation.
Absolutely. And I think because in that, Bill, isn't what we're doing when we're listening to someone is we're actually giving them respect. We're respecting that they have a perspective that may not be ours. And that's healthy. It's healthy for a nonprofit to hear it, because like all of us, we can become myopic and very self-centered and self-focused and not really concerned about anything else. And we receive it as criticism. And it doesn't have to be that way. A critique is not by nature negative. It may feel that way, but it is, and oftentimes healthy, because it helps us to focus and see a perspective other than our own.
That's right. We've got our, and particularly a professional staff, we can, as you say, become myopic. We can only see it from our point of view, but we need very much that input, sometimes input that we don't even like to hear. But amazingly, if we listen to it, sometimes we're going to get suggestions that will make our organization stronger and certainly our appeals stronger as well. Have time
Absolutely.
for just one final question. In any type of persuasive situation, testimonials are important.
Mhm.
Who do you seek testimonials from and how do you use them? Testimonials about Macaulay.
I think that there's two that are important to me, and that I would seek as I am evolving into this new role in here at Macaulay, is that I think the testimonials of alumni and hearing what they say about the people that impacted them. And it's often the faculty, it's fellow classmates. It isn't the school per se. The school is the conduit to the experience. And that doesn't mean that there's not unbelievable things about Macaulay, because there are. But I think the other then side of that testimonial is the faculty, and hearing their voice of how students impacted their life. I know, having worked with youth for many years, and particularly running a home for young men that would otherwise be incarcerated, as I look back, did I have some influence on the young men that I was able to touch? Sure. But truly, they impacted me, and they changed me and shaped me. And so, in thinking of that, the two testimonials are the students, the alumni, who say how the faculty impacted their life. But the other side to that coin, right, is the faculty and how their lives have been changed because of that experience with the students.
That's fascinating. And I will add my own testimonial here since I'm a graduate of Macaulay School. As I told you when I met you at the Macaulay gathering a couple of months ago, I was a kid who really needed the discipline and the support and the guidance that Macaulay gave me. I was there my junior and senior year of high school. So when I'm talking with you today on the Biz Communication Show, I have a very strong tie in with you and with your institution naturally. And all these years later, I recognize that there are certain habits I have and possibly one or two skills that I developed because of my experiences with Macaulay. So you've got my testimonial.
Well, thank you. And we thank you for who you bringing us on today. I personally thank you for letting me be a part of this. It's an honor, and I'm grateful.
Well, what is it Macaulay says? Honor, truth, duty.
That's right. Honor, truth, duty.
Okay, Drew, this has been most informative and inspiring as well. I know there are those who would love to get in touch with you, so please give us your contact information.
Well, my name is Drew Reed, and last name is spelled R-E-A-D, which gives you the pleasure in fundraising to have a email address like DREAD, D-R-E-A-D, at Macaulay, spelled MCCALLIE.org. DREAD at Macaulay.org.
Yes, as I told you, dread, I mean, some people that fits their view of a fundraiser.
It's fantastic. It's a great icebreaker.
Okay, well, since you've been gracious enough to share your contact information, I'll give mine, Bill Lampton, the Biz Communication Guy. So logically, my website is B-I-Z, bizcommunicationguy.com. I invite you to go there. Check my services for organizations and leaders and get in touch with me. My telephone number and email are on there. Would love to talk with you about your communication challenges and problems and how I can help you find solutions to them. Drew, before we close, any concluding comments you'd want to offer?
I think as certainly in this season that we're in, as we always are in the fall and think about giving, I would just encourage people in general to give somewhere. Whether it's the homeless person you see on the street, whether it's a food bank, or whatever your particular passion is, help create the change that you want to see in the world. Give somewhere.
A great closing statement, very much so. Thank you again, Drew Reed, for being with us today and for the way that you represent a terrific school.
Thank you, sir.
And thanks to all of you who joined us either on the podcast or the video version of the Biz Communication Show. Again, I'm your host, Bill Lampton, the Biz Communication Guy. Looking forward to being with you again next week and with a terrific guest that we will host.